You see, over the past couple of weeks I've been thinking about this. There's this stigma around carbs, around athletes, that I've just never understood. Why do people have such a vendetta against carbs? Why are they known as the worst macronutrient, or the one that you should limit the most? It's something that never really I've ever understood. Why? I mean, even right now, in here, I've got my Gatorade Endurance, 44 grams of carbs. This morning, before I start my run today, I had oatmeal and I had a Cliff Bar, which will show up now how many carbs that had. For the run, 60 gram precision fuel and hydration chew. But why are people so against carbs? You see, they're the number one source of energy for the body. So why do so many people hate the idea of increasing carb intake? It just doesn't make any sense, especially for athletes. I mean, for people who are not as active as someone like me or an Ironman triathlete or really any other athlete, I can understand why you'd want to reduce carb load and carb intake. But as an athlete, it's extremely important. So in this video, I want to demonstrate to all of you as athletes why it is so unbelievably important to actually increase your carb intake. I'm going to be going over what carbohydrates are, how they go through the body, and why they are so important to athletes and to improving athletic performance. I'll also bust a couple of myths that I've heard about carbs. But first, we got an hour and 40-minute run to do. I'm going to go have some carbs in that run. So let's get to it. Okay, run complete. And now on to the first topic of today's video. What are carbs? Simple definition of carbs are the body's number one source of energy, aiding in the production of ATP, the source of energy for muscles in the body. ATP, or adenosine triphosphate, is the number one source of energy that the muscles require during physical activity of any sort. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to try and keep this as simple as possible, but there are two main classifications for carbs. Simple carbs, such as in cereal and pasta, regular pasta, not whole wheat, and more complex carbs, whole wheat bread, oats, fiber in bananas, and really all fruits and vegetables, but I don't have any vegetables out. There are 4 different scientific classifications of carbs. There's monosaccharides, or single sugar units, which is classified as a simple sugar. There are disaccharides, which are paired sugar units. Those are also considered simple sugars. And then there are polysaccharides and oligosaccharides, which are longer, more complex chains of sugar units, hence why they are classified as complex carbs. For our purposes, we'll just stick with simple and complex carbs, since the scientific classifications really don't have any practical real-world use. All right, now that we know what carbs are, now I'm going to talk about the flow of carbs and sugars throughout the body. So the digestive process breaks down digestible complex carbs to their building blocks, which are monosaccharides, which are then absorbed into the body because the body only uses monosaccharides. It does not use the disaccharides, polysaccharides, or oligosaccharides. It does not use any of those three. It has to break it down into monosaccharides to then be used within the body. But once broken down, they can be used for immediate energy, or they're stored in glycogen, in the muscles, and in the liver cells, the only two storage areas for carbohydrates. So just a little bit about the digestive process as well. Digestion first starts off in the saliva in the mouth, and then it goes down through into the stomach, where it's then broken down with gastric juices. It's then neutralized by sodium bicarbonate in the small intestine. Then it is released into the pancreas for pancreatic amylase. And then once complete in the pancreas and intestines, the monosaccharides are then absorbed into the absorptive cells in the intestinal wall for distribution to the muscles and to liver cells within the body. So just a little bit also about carb storage in the muscles. Normal carb storage in muscle cells is about 15 grams per kilogram of muscle tissue. Muscle is anywhere between 30% of a woman's mass, 40% of a man's mass, which averages out between 250 to 600 grams, or 1,000 to 2,400 calories in muscle tissue. The liver cells store about 50 grams per kilogram of tissue. Blood glucose stores range from 3 to 5 grams in small adults. 10 to 15, no, I don't like that. Cut. The average adult stores around 2,000 to 2,500 calories, which can be extended to over 3,000 in endurance athletes. Hence why it's very critical that endurance athletes absorb more carbs. You're going to be doing more stuff. You're going to be more active. You need to be keeping up with your calorie intake. And the easiest way to keep up with your calorie intake is by absorbing more carbs. Granted, I'm showing complex carbs, but yeah, it's just what I brought up here. So anyway, the average adult burns about 100 calories per mile. That's assuming that you're doing cardio at a lower, and by the way, that's for running. I should clarify that. 100 calories per mile of running, that's in around zone 2 cardio. So it covers up to about 20 miles. But if you're throwing in mixed intervals, you're throwing in harder efforts, like I explained in the last video with the run test, mixing in the harder intervals, that's going to increase the amount of energy your body consumes and needs, which then means you need to refuel it more with precision fuel and hydration, or use Morton gels, or use goos, whatever your preferred source of intra-workout nutrition is. That's really why it's important, because the body uses the ATP that carbs help to facilitate producing. Then that transfers into the muscles to give it a little bit more energy so that you perform at a higher and more optimal level. This video I think is very important to me, not only because I'm an endurance athlete, but it's also very important because I feel like the stigma around carbohydrates, it gets such a bad rep, and it's actually really important. I'd say that it's, for endurance athletes, the most important macronutrient, and I think it's also the most overlooked because it gets such a bad rep, mainly and primarily from bodybuilding and from people who are more focused on lifts or strength gains and not endurance focused. But carbs are very important for those athletes as well. When you work out for a while, glycogen depletion or carb calorie restriction reduces or increases cortisol levels to preserve liver glycogen, which in turn preserves blood sugar. Cortisol stimulates lipolysis to slow carb utilization rates, but it also strives to produce much needed glucose through gluconeogenesis. I hope I said that right. I should know that by now. But basically, what that means, I wrote that down for my reference. Basically, I'm going to translate that now. When carbs are low during prolonged exercise, cortisol steps in to keep blood sugar stable, help burn more fat, dietary fat being a secondary source of ATP, adenosine triphosphate production, and it can also help to make new sugar if needed. It's basically the backup system for the body when carbs are running low. And you definitely don't want to do that because the brain requires glucose, so do the muscles, to function properly, and the brain will ultimately do whatever is needed to function. In this case, it makes glucose from non-glucose sources, which is catabolizing or breaking down muscle tissue. Hence why, if you ever heard of that kind of like sulfuric smell, that means you're low on energy. Your body is breaking down muscle tissue at that point to give it more energy so that it can sustain the workout that it's going through. As athletes, reducing your intake of carbs will cause muscle reduction through catabolizing it. That's something I really want to highlight right now. I think the reason why people say that endurance sport breaks down muscle and why it makes you smaller and it kills your gains, as people like to call it, is because of this process. Because they fear that they read this kind of thing and then they're like, oh, well, yeah, it just breaks down. Okay, simple, it breaks down your muscles. Categorically false. It does not. There is, as long as you strike an intricate balance between getting in your strength work and getting in your endurance work, you can do both. You can do both. You just have to fuel properly. And that's why nutrition is so important for athletes. Because obviously you do not want to be breaking down muscles because you're just trying to sustain a longer endurance effort, right? So that means you got to fuel your body properly to give it the energy it needs to continue performing at a high level. I don't know why this thing just blew up, but okay. Why do carbs, this is the question I really wanted to answer today. Why do carbs get such a bad reputation in the fitness industry? I think I answered that, hopefully, today with the stigma around people believing that endurance sport makes you smaller because it tries to break down muscles for energy. But that doesn't happen unless you increase carb intake. But the flip side of this, and this is the second myth that I really want to bust today, is that eating carbs makes you gain weight. False, to an extent. You see, it's not carbs specifically that cause you to gain more weight. It's just eating more. Weight gain is only focused on calorie numbers. It is not focused on anything else. It is not focused on the macronutrient or micronutrient breakdown of whatever you are eating. If you are eating more calories, you will gain more weight. It really is honestly that simple. You eat more calories, you gain more weight. If that's from carbs, then yes, carbs will make you gain more weight. That's if you're eating more carbs. But if you're eating more protein, you will gain more weight. If you're eating more dietary fats, you will gain more weight. It is solely based on calories, not based on macronutrient numbers. I also feel like with that as well, because carbs are the easiest to digest and the most accessible macronutrient of the three by far, I think that it's the most abundant macronutrient. So I think that that's why people attribute gaining more weight because of carbs when that's just not true, right? And that's, I think now we're going to go full circle back to athletes here, why I think that coaches or other people in the athletic and fitness industry believe that carbs are kind of the enemy and that they should be reduced because they are the most accessible, they are the most abundant and easily digestible, which makes them the most overeaten, which then means that they have an increased caloric intake, which means that they then gain weight, which then reduces their athletic performance. You see, there's the balance that you have to find. Eating enough carbs where you're fueling your performance optimally on the one hand, and on the other hand, you're not eating too much to the point where you're gaining too much weight from it because of an increase in total calories, total volume of food eaten. So with that said, how much should you be eating then? That's a very good question. And it really depends on the amount of physical activity being completed. You need enough for energy to be made for the workout. You need enough during to sustain high performance throughout the workout. And you need enough after to replenish depleted glycogen stores to return to optimal levels of energy. The recommended dietary allowance, or RDA, recommends carb intake for adults over the age of 19 to be taking in minimum 130 grams. It's 130 grams, and that's considered to be the minimum amount needed to maintain normal metabolism and utilization of fuels. However, I'm going to put a huge caveat here. If you're an endurance athlete, you are going to need more than that. When I did my full day of eating, I think I had around 400 grams of carbs, which is considerably higher than what the average person should be eating. But then again, I burned 1,200 calories that day. So my total energy expenditure for the day, I believe, was around 3,400 calories. So I had to make up for that. Obviously, I make up for it in protein and dietary fats as well. But carbs are a very big component because I'm fueling for endurance workouts. I will do videos on the importance of dietary fats and the importance of protein later down the line, because I think that those are two other areas that are also very important to focus on. But people put such a big emphasis on protein because it's, how do I put this? Probably the most difficult of the three to get into your nutrition plan. I don't like saying diet. I view diet as more of a short-term solution when nutrition is more of a long-term sustainable practice. So I try to restrict the use of diet in my vocabulary. You might be able to tell I kind of like try to work around it, but anyway, I digress. I'll get back into how much you should be eating. It really depends, obviously, on the level of physical activity, like I just said. The acceptable macronutrient distribution range, or AMDR, for carbs is set between 45 and 65% of total caloric intake, which is nearly double the recommended dietary allowance. So it's a lot, but it's the number one source of energy for the body, right? Not only does your brain need it, your muscles need it. Your whole body needs it to function optimally. If you are interested in nutritional programming, or you need help and guidance as a professional athlete or as an aspiring professional athlete, it won't be down in the link in this video, but stay tuned. In the next two videos, hopefully, I will put out my website for my fitness and nutrition coaching company, Active Edge Nutrition, where you'll be able to pick up a nutritional program to help you with getting the optimal performance out of your training and help prepare you to perform at your highest levels possible. One of the myths that I want to bust in this video as well is about the difference between good sugars and bad sugars. That's not a thing. There is no such thing as good sugars and bad sugars. Sugar is just sugar. The same sugar that you find in candy is the same sugar you find in apples, fruit, and other fruits. There is no difference in the complexion of the carbs, of the sugar. It's all the same. The only difference between them is the micronutrients that surround them. So that's the first myth busted. Despite the average intake in the US population being around 47 to 49% of total calories for men and women respectively, according to the US Department of Health and Human Services, total calories is what is too high in our respective diets, which is causing a higher level of obesity in our population. I believe the population number, I think it's now up to like 70% of the population is considered obese. Yeah, some of these numbers are pretty astonishing. Towards 68.6%, and nearly 1 in 3 adults are considered overweight. It's sad because then people start seeing this, and then they start attributing carbs as being the main issue and the main problem, like I just described before, when it's not just carbs, it's total calories, total volume. I mean, this quote that I literally just read, with the average intake, that's from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, saying that total calories is what is too high in our respective diets. I would say I'd switch that out and say nutrition, but anyway. I just want to leave you guys off with one other thing as well. Although carbs are not considered essential for survival, considering how the body can synthesize the amounts of glucose needed to survive from non-carb sources, they are generally needed in specific quantities to optimize health and performance. So an athlete's number one priority should be on optimizing health and performance, hence why carbs are a vital component to their training and recovery. I hope that this video was able to, it might have been a little bit all over the place, but I hope it was able to help you understand that for athletes, carbs are extremely important for us. It's the building blocks of our training. It helps us to perform at our highest levels, and it's absolutely essential for making sure that we get the most out of our training, because who wouldn't want to get the most out of their training? You know, you're doing all this work and you're putting all this effort in. You don't want to compromise it by having a poor nutritional plan. You want to make sure that it's good and that it's optimizing your performance. But hopefully I was able to convey the importance and how critical carbs are in our nutrition as athletes. Maybe you learned a thing or two about digestion of carbohydrates and sugars in the body, or maybe you learned something else. I don't know. Hopefully that was helpful. I really wanted to make this video because I've seen so much on social media about why carbs are so bad and why you should be restricting them. And I think, no, that's very objective and it's very broad, where nutrition is very subjective. It's a very niche topic that does not have a one-size-fits-all answer. It's different for every person. You know, I burn a certain amount of calories per day. Let's say I burn 3,300. There are others who do the same amount of physical activity and may only burn 3,000. There's some others that may burn 4,000. Bit extremes, but you get the point. Everyone's body is different, everyone's genetic makeup is different, and everyone's total daily energy expenditure is going to be different. So hopefully I was able to emphasize the importance there of carbs and also of why your nutrition really does matter. This is going to be a 3-part series, so this is kind of part 1 with why carbs are so important. And then I'll also do something about protein, and I will do another one about dietary fats. I'll probably space it out though, because I have a couple of other videos that I have in the pipeline that I want to put out as well that I think are also very important. But yeah, hopefully you guys are able to get something from that. I'm going to be launching my Active Edge nutrition programming. That'll be coming very soon, very shortly. I'm just finalizing it before I make it sort of public and available for access to everyone. So if you're interested, you can leave a comment down below, or if you want, you can go to my Instagram page and send over a DM inquiring about a nutrition program. I'd be more than happy to help, as always. And as always, as I say at the end of every video, train hard, train frequently, find results. I'll see you guys next time.